What's good guys, my name is Oleg Nikitin and you're watching No Limits On, and today we test and compare the internally recorded footage of the A7S III with Apple ProRes 422 and Apple ProRes RAW 12-bit to the Atomos Ninja 5. I'll show you the side-by-sides, tell about the advantages of using ProRes codec and quirks and benefits of using the RAW. Because YouTube's compression is very strong, I uploaded this 4K video file to the cloud service, so after you watch this video here you can download the file and also some sample footage using the link in the description below. Let's start with internal 10-bit 422 footage compared with ProRes 422 from Atomos Ninja 5 recorder. By the way, I have two in-depth videos about this recorder and monitor on my channel, check them out if you're interested in it. The videos were recorded simultaneously onto the SD UHS-2 card and to the Atomos. So at the left you see the ungraded internally recorded footage, on the right ProRes 422, and down below the Luma scope, so you can see the exposure values. Right away after applying this same exact color corrections, we see that the ProRes footage is a little less flat and has some more contrast and saturation, which is good in my opinion because we keep the dynamic range, but we have to put less stress and pressure by pushing and pulling the picture less. Here is the difference in the settings to match out the pictures quite closely. Feel free to pause the video to pixel peep or to read the settings carefully. Let's see the difference in sharpness by zooming in to 2000%. Seems like internal recording has slightly more noise reduction applied, but the difference is negligible. To make the lighting scenario a little bit tougher, let's throw in a red and blue LED lights pointed at the wall, so they will light the white wall unevenly. And after applying an extreme grade, yeah, maybe nobody does this far, but I see no difference in colors or any bending issues. Now let's change the white balance for very warm 9000 kelvins and fix it in both pictures. To my eyes, there is no difference. I made internal footage a touch darker so you can see the difference in sliding comparison. The same works for 3000 Kelvin, very cool white balance. It corrects perfectly fine on both. Second base ISO 12800 looks pretty good to me, no issues there. The image is very clean, but the ProRes is a touch sharper and a little noisier as well. 3200 ISO sits in between two native ISO 640 and 12800 but looks very usable, noise is fine and almost filmic-like. I'm okay to use 3200, but then I would switch to second base ISO 12800, skipping the ISOs in between. And now the fun part, testing out the 8-bit 420 in camera versus 10-bit 422 ProRes footage. Straightly we see the strong color bending. And if we look at the RGB parade scope, we'll see the steps in the RGB channels. Of course, nobody grades like this, but I made it to make the difference more obvious. The green leaves are struggling and we see the blocks of color dancing all around. So let's talk about RAW. Yes, it's a 16-bit RAW linear signal, which is converted to 12-bit S-Log3 as Gamma 3 Cine without losing quality, and it's essentially the same thing. I'll leave a link in the description below for my fellow YouTube creator, where he is explaining this thing in detail. You have 24, 25, 30, 50 and 60p as frame rate options, no 100p or 120p or any S&Q modes though. You have to select the frame rate in a separate menu for RAW output settings, not in the usual menu. The quality will be 4.2K, which is 2 million pixels more than the regular UHD, but I can barely see the difference, to be honest, even in the 4.2 custom timeline. One of the biggest quirks is that the remaining time is shown incorrectly. Here are the numbers for different compression rates in regular ProRes for 1TB spare SSD, and the ProRes RAW has almost the same bitrate as ProRes HQ, but it shows much less, and when you record it actually counts the seconds around 3 times slower. So expect around 2.5 hours from 1TB SSD, hopefully Atomos will fix this in the future firmware. Some other caveats: you cannot adjust the brightness of your camera screen or viewfinder or change the tint of it. Steady shot active will be unavailable, and also the RAW clip does not contain the gyroscopic data for Catalyst Browse software stabilization. You can still choose whether you record 10-bit or 8-bit internal backup footage, but it can be recorded only in S-Log3, so stick to the 10-bit please. When RAW recording is on, you can record internally only in XAVC S4K or XAVC SI 4K codecs. As I said, the S&Q is unavailable and you'll see the sign not raw input on your Ninja 5. The camera will show that you shoot in picture profile off, and the picture profile setting and the creative look setting are unavailable, but you should know that you'll be still recording only in S-Log 3 no matter what's written on the screen. Now let's jump into Final Cut and go to extended settings right here. Then click raw to log conversion and choose the established parameter. Also, you can choose a LUT to be applied, but if you are overexposing an image for 1 or 2 stops for better noise performance, the picture will be blown out. So I set it to none and work like if it was a regular S-Log 3 footage. If you leave the raw conversion at none, you'll get extremely blown out picture, but when you pull it down with your color correction tools, you bring the exposure back and it looks nice and vibrant and not overexposed at all. And some people on the internet say that the raw is that powerful that it can recover that many highlight information, but it's not true. They just don't convert the raw signal properly and they think that it's some kind of magic. RAW has exactly the same dynamic range as the internal S-Log 3 recording. It's a limitation of a camera and a sensor, not the format, and I'll show you that in a bit in my overexposure test. But the real advantage of RAW is the amount of color information. Look at the steps in the blue channel in 10-bit footage on the scope and the even and smooth color gradient in 12-bit RAW. Here is what I was talking about when said about exactly the same dynamic range. It's identical with the internal recording, but RAW has no in-camera noise reduction applied. That is why the image is much noisier and a little bit sharper as well. The same applies for in-camera lens distortion control. In RAW, it's gone. What I see is that the RAW has better gradients but much more noise. The 4.2K resolution shows very small difference in my opinion. It's just a little wider and maybe a tad sharper, but it's because of the absence of denoising, I guess. In extreme grading test, the red and blue gradients are almost identical with in-camera 10-bit footage, but RAW has tons more noise and colorful or chroma noise. When you expose correctly at plus 1.7 or 2 EV, the ISO 25600 is pretty clean on both pictures, and sorry for a piece of dust on the lens. And the noise in RAW when exposed properly is not an issue. But when you underexpose, it's a different story. The colored noise of RAW is just unusable when underexposing. And when you do overexpose completely, the data is unrecoverable for sure, so keep your highlights around 95 IRE and use the false color on your Ninja V to monitor it. So let's conclude guys, the fact that we have so many different options starting from 3 different codecs with different compressions internally, ProRes options with Ninja 5 and even ProRes RAW, it's awesome, because everybody will choose the option for his or her needs, or will mix and match different options like I will. ProRes RAW is still being developed. We still do not have proper controls for white balance and ISO to choose after the footage is being shot. For now, it's more of a very flexible and rather noisy S-Log 3 12-bit footage. But it certainly will develop over time and maybe we'll see some major improvements. I was astonished by the work of in-camera denoise system. It shows great performance dealing with the chroma noise, but retaining good detail and sharpness. So here are my thoughts on whether you should use ProRes or ProRes RAW with the Sony a7S III. You can definitely live without the Ninja 5 and get outstanding 10-bit performance even using SD UHS 2 card in 95% of shooting scenarios. But Atomos Ninja 5 is not only a recorder but also a great monitor and a helper with tons of great features, and using SSD media is actually cheaper than buying V90 SD cards for the same capacity. Also ProRes edits like butter on almost any computer, and even XAVC SI 600 megabits a second 4K 60 is a tough thing to work with for some machines. So for backup you can use the internal memory card, and for easy and faster workflow you simply plug into your computer the SSD from Ninja and instantly work off of it with ProRes files. I'd use ProRes LT or ProRes 422 for most of my shoots, and if I need to pack light and compact, I'm perfectly fine with shooting internally, plus proxies. And for well lit and tough in terms of color and gradients environment, ProRes RAW may be a great option. And the good thing is that you can always have backup internal recording with the in-camera noise reduction applied, so you have two options in post when shooting RAW and internally simultaneously. So it's up to you guys which format will be working great for you. And we're moving on to the quote of the episode. Every choice you make has an end result. Zig Ziglar. It's great that we do have this choice here. And the question of the episode, will you be shooting in RAW with your Sony a7S III? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you did like what you just saw, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell and likes probably. I'll be highly appreciating this, guys. Thanks so much for watching and see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.